Let's get into the advisory now. And when do society's milestones not match financial realities? Well, according to recent research, 60% of Australians have a stronger desire to live their dream lifestyle compared to the desire for their dream home. Peita Diamantidis joins us from Caboodle Financial Services. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I love this report. You know, we're basically choosing lifestyle over necessarily having material assets potentially.
It's nice, isn't it, actually? When I first read it, I thought, oh no, what are we going to do for them? But actually, in thinking about it, I think people are getting a bit better informed, living in the now and living well, as opposed to collecting things. I think it's pretty powerful.
Or are they just giving up? Because look, as we know, look, buying a house is the biggest asset you'll ever buy in your life. It's out of reach for so many, particularly the younger now. So are they pulling back their expectations then as a result?
Yeah, I think they are. And I did some digging on this because there's a lot of talk, particularly from the older generations, that they're just not trying hard enough. You know, none of those avocado toasts, none of that, like they should just be saving harder. And I took a look back when my parents had, you know, when they started out in their 20s and they just had me. In Sydney, you could rent a one-bedroom apartment for $30 a week.
Whoa.
Right? The average now for a one-bedroom apartment in Sydney is about $780 a week. Now, if your median earner from back then in the mid-70s travelled forward in time and got the median earning now, they could only afford half of that one-bedroom apartment. So income has gone up by 13 times, rent has gone up by 26 times. So we talk about buying a property, they can't even afford the rent. How do you save for a property?
So what does that mean then in terms of how people want to improve their financial literacy and try and get ahead?
Yeah, it comes down to a lot more about cash flow. And I think it's interesting as a financial advisor, cash flow has never been something that we are trained on or we study. I know that sounds bizarre, but we're sort of encouraged to lean into investments or, you know, that superannuation, maybe insurance. But the day-to-day cash flow, how you can get more out of your hard-earned buck, is not something that advisors really have historically focused on. More are now, but all of them are the younger advisors.
Yeah.
So, Peter, let's just take a look at that chart, the top aspirations then for these different generations.
Yeah, look, this is interesting. I'm right in Gen X, right? So I'm right in the middle of there, the forgotten generation, obviously, often. And financial independence is an interesting thing because the messaging there for me is, as opposed to owning a home or paying off your home, we want freedom. Maybe it's freedom to move overseas for 6 months or to start a side hustle or a new business. Like, that's what that is telling me. Whereas previously, and I think Gen Z there, owning a home, that's their parents' pressure on, this is what you should be doing, right? So I think there's some societal messaging here that as we get a little older, we're pushing through, but these poor younger generations are feeling like they've got to meet the grade, you know, and they feel behind. There's shame in this for them.
So that's Gen Y, where they're going their own way.
Yeah, I think they're starting to. You know, I think they're just saying, no, forget it. This is not possible. Why would I try and meet a standard I can never reach?
There is going to be the huge intergenerational wealth transfer. So you would hope that some of these assets are going to go down into other generations. But if the owning your own home with your own salary is really out of reach, what are they doing instead? Are you looking at things like adventure funds?
Yeah, so it's setting up more now funding. So when you look at, I mean, you mentioned, you know, wealth building is the biggest thing that we'll do is buy a home. If you're not going to do that, we need to be more proactive about our investing now. Now, there's a lot more apps now where you can invest straight away. All of those things are going to, for me, become far more important. The other thing is getting creative about our homing options. You know, it could be, I mean, I've actually had some friends that I caught up with, some girlfriends, who have all agreed that at a certain age, if they're on their own, they're going to buy basically a big house together with 6 of them and have like a commune. Like, people are coming up with very creative and different approaches to build wealth and have housing security, which is another issue this brings up.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's actually fractional ownership as well, which is becoming a thing, isn't it?
It is, it is. But unfortunately, I'm not sure that financial services are ready for this. You know, even you look at the marketing for something like insurance, personal insurance, income protection. What they're talking about is, hey, if you've got a mortgage, you might need income protection. Well, if there's a whole generation that doesn't ever get one, do they think, oh, we don't need insurance? And are they then exposed to a serious illness or an accident? So I think there's some messaging and some thinking that really needs to change in financial services.
Before we poo-poo anyone under 30, some younger people are doing it better in terms of their retirement planning too.
Yeah, they are. I think they're far, I mean, I remember when I was in my 20s and 30s, I mean, I knew there might be a super account, but it was not something I was focused on. They are definitely more aware. Their literacy is higher. So I think their financial literacy is far more powerful. And interestingly, what I found interesting with the Stanford data was they actually want to hit the same milestones as their parents and grandparents did. You know, so that's married in mid-20s, buy a house sometimes then, and then have kids before 30s. They'd actually like to do that. It's just that there's a big gap between what they'd like to do and what they're able to do.
Well, I guess this is the danger of setting yourself up for failure, isn't
Yes,
it? If you
it
have
really
those milestones and you're not hitting them. And particularly, I guess you're
Absolutely.
comparing yourself to the older generations.
100%. And the older generations who are in senior positions in the financial institutions, who I think struggle with the fact that their lived experience is so different from these younger generations coming through. So the marketing teams or even the product teams might not be coming up with innovative solutions for these younger challenges.
And the Stanford data therefore says at the end of their report you've given us that we kind of need to redesign the American or Australian dream.
Yeah, completely. And think about, I mean, flexibility is an interesting thing. This comes up with superannuation. The way it's built right now, once you're in pension phase, you're in pension phase. If you want to start working again, it's reversing the whole thing. And I think that's going to be required throughout people's life, is this ability to go in and out of earning or building wealth or earning again. So I think products that respond to that, rather than merely looking at it as what we're interested in you once you've got a home, I think we really need to change.
So, I mean, you're saying financial advice needs to be much more flexible than creative, rather than have that rigid.
Very,
Yes, about it.
and really tapping into EQ. You know, this is going to be a lot of coaching, right? Financial coaching, getting them to take advantage of what they've got, rather than using the external milestones set by society, buying a home, to get them in shape financially.
I love this too. Females working harder to achieve their dreams, showing more motivation than men.
Yes.
Don't look at me when you say that.
No, he's achieved his dreams. He's done quite well for himself. But what does that show us?
Well, part of that is, you know, we've got now a generation in Gen X of women being the first to work full time as a high proportion of women in that age group. And so it's showing up that they want to own their future.
Yeah.
And they want to own it from their own perspective as well as potentially their partners, not defaulted to their partners. So I think they're leaning in, you know, and they need a lot more support and help. But I'm excited by that figure too. I thought that was fantastic.
And also seeking more financial advice since the pandemic. Maybe that gave us a little bit of a reset.
I think it did. I think also people saw that, well, wait a minute, if I'm not spending a bit and there's some money building, what would I do with it? So the possibility of investing in growth, I think, became more real to a whole lot more people.
All right, Peter.
Peter, I was just going to say, is the onus also on the advisors that they haven't adapted either?
100%. I think our advice base is generally in the sort of 50s to 60s as an average age for financial advisors. So there's a lot of shifting and EQ required to connect with a younger generation dealing with a different future. So we've got some work to do.